I want to be the first to welcome you all to the final week of off-season content, because come next Monday, it's all aboard week one content, baby. And what a better way to finish up the off-season than to talk about our rankings. And we're going to compare where we have the top running backs right next to the top 35 running backs in the expert consensus rankings. What's going on, Headliner Nation? In today's video, we are going to be diving into the top 35 running backs as listed in the expert consensus rankings, and then I'm going to be breaking down where we have them in our rankings. And if you want to build your own rankings, our cheat sheets and our draft guide this year are customizable and allow you to do just that. For only $21.99, you're going to get almost 200 exclusive videos that you can't find here on YouTube, plus other exclusive content that isn't offered by any other fantasy platforms out there. And that's going to get you all ready for draft night. But when your draft actually comes this week, then you download our cheat sheets to your computer, save your own file, and not only is it going to allow you to move the names around yourself, but then you can mark them off as well as they're drafted. So make sure you hit up the link down in the description below, thefantasyheadliners.com, $21.99, and I promise you it will be the best purchase you make for the entire year. Now, just a quick programming note as we jump into it here, but these rankings are based on half PPR scoring. That way, regardless of you're in a full PPR league or a standard league, you can use these rankings and then just adjust back and forth a little bit. But if you need a little bit more clarity, our draft guide does offer full, half, and standard cheat sheets for the top 250 and all positional rankings. But let's get into it now. The top two ECR running backs are the same as us, Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. Basically, everyone has them as the 1-2 punch right now. It's Bijan Robinson that continues to go up and down a little bit. He's at 3 in the ECR, he's at 5 in our rankings. Now, we've come a little bit more around to the fact that drafting Bijan earlier in the first round is just going to happen. And given the weird state of the running back market this offseason, it's kind of lent itself to being something that a lot of people just have to do if they want to be strong at the running back position in the first round. So you know what? Who cares if we have him at 5 or at 3? This is a guy that if you're taking him in the middle of the first round, we're just keeping our fingers crossed that he returns that value and that Tyler Algier doesn't steal too much work away from him. You know we love ourselves some Nick Chubb. He's at number 4 in the ECR and in our rankings. And honestly, Nick Chubb, I think, depending on the workload he gets in the passing game, is a dark horse candidate. And really, could you say dark horse candidate at this point? But whatever, to be the RB1 at the end of the season. SAQUON Barkley at number 5 is RB3 overall for us. Now, I do know Jake has him a little bit higher than me. I still have him inside the top 10, and I'm not willing to really draft him over some other running backs. But if you're looking for a safe reason to draft Barkley, we just know he's going to get the workload. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that he also hits the high upside with some efficiency this year, because last year the efficiency was awful. Tony Pollard at number 6 is number 8 for us. Love Tony Pollard. Just how much work is he going to get to begin the season? Do they try to be a little bit careful with it just to make sure he stays healthy? And then also on top of that, Deuce Vaughn's looking really good right now. We've got Derrick Henry one spot higher at RB6, and I don't think anyone hates Derrick Henry or the situation he is in. I just think everyone is sitting around waiting for the walls to cave in due to all the workload that he's had over the last several years. Now, we have Josh Jacobs at RB7 compared to them at RB8. Now, with Josh Jacobs, I would love to go higher with him, but maybe it does take a few weeks for him to get into game shape. He hasn't been at training camp, and it doesn't really matter what you do on your own. It's really hard to get into game shape if you're not out there with your teammates practicing in those situations. So maybe to begin with, it's just a little bit of a slow start, but then we see an upwards tick after that, and that's why I've got him here. Now, at one point this offseason, Jonathan Taylor was like my RB3 on the season, and I had to drop him way down because we don't even know what's going to happen. So right now, he resides at RB12 for us compared to RB9 for the ECR. I think a lot of people are just expecting him to land in a great situation, but here's the thing. We don't know that. What's the best situation for him to land in? It's staying in Indianapolis. Second best would be going to Miami. Whatever it ends up being though, let's just hope it doesn't cave his overall value for the season. I've had to drop Ramondre Stevenson a few spots, but we still are actually one spot higher on him right now than the ECR. This is a guy that is going to still get plenty of work on the ground. We've seen Pierre Strong even traded at this point. So now the one thing that we know for certain, Ramondre Stevenson is going to be the receiving back this year, and he's still going to get 200 plus touches on the ground. Give me all of that work for Ramondre Stevenson, baby. The sky's the limit for him this year. Now, here's a huge discrepancy because we've got Joe Mixon all the way down at RB17 compared to the ECR of RB11. And that's crazy to think about because we've always been big Joe Mixon supporters in fantasy football. Now, this season, though, I think we need to be a little bit worried about that upside being capped. And that's really the only reason why he's lower. I still think he's going to be really good for volume. I still think he's going to get tons of touches, but is he going to score 12 to 15 touchdowns? And if he does, what's his workload going to look like in the passing game this season? There's just some guys over him right now that I think can finish higher. We're one spot lower on Najee Harris right now, who comes in at 13 for us and 12 for them. Najee Harris has slowly started making his way down my board. Why? Because Jaylen Warren still looks good, carrying over from last season. And number two, I am starting to become more and more worried about Najee Harris being super inefficient again. And if that does happen, is that going to leave the door open for Jaylen Warren? I'm just being cautious with it. We are two spots higher on Travis Etienne, and I'm sorry, but Tank Bigsby does not scare me in the slightest. Travis Etienne is going to be a guy that has RB1 upside all season long because how explosive he is. Bigsby and Etienne are two completely different types of running backs. They brought Tank Bigsby in to do the good things that Travis Etienne has struggled with, like those short yardage situations and goal line situations. But working in the passing game and being a trusted former teammate and current teammate of Trevor Lawrence is something that goes a long way for Travis Etienne. And with that home run speed and ability, the dude could score from anywhere and rip off big plays at will. I honestly thought we were going to be some of the highest people on Jahmyr Gibbs, and we're actually two spots lower. The one thing I continue to caution people on with him is just the fact that they have so many weapons in that offense, and that David Montgomery is still going to see upwards of 225 carries on the ground this season. That could limit Jahmyr Gibbs some certain weeks. Yeah, he's going to win some weeks, but there's going to be other weeks that probably are going to hurt you. Now, we've got Aaron Jones all the way up at RB10 compared to the RB15 in the ECR. Jordan Love is going to absolutely need to depend on his running backs this season, and Aaron Jones is the one guy in that offense that he can trust to be out there in the passing game and in the running game. I like his ability to hit some really nice upside this season, and I like his ability to be a guy that absolutely blows his ADP out of the water. And we're much lower on Breece Hall, and it all comes back to what happens to a guy after he tears his ACL. Then on top of that, they've added Dalvin Cook. In the long run, we could look at Breece Hall at being a top of the first round draft pick next year, but for now, he is a guy that honestly, I'm only trusting low RB2 numbers for him this season. Maybe some big games here or there, but a very slow start to the season. We've got Kenneth Walker at RB14 compared to the RB17 in the ECR, and we're not as easily scared off by Zach Charbonnet as the rest of the community. I love me some Kenneth Walker because his home run ability absolutely showed up last year. So even if he loses a few touches, even if he loses some work in the passing game, and even if he doesn't score as many touchdowns as we would like, his ability to go big from all over the field and his ability to rack up some broken tackles is going to still give him RB1 upside any single week. Miles Sanders and Dameon Pierce are both guys that we are on board with at their current ECR. There's no difference in the rankings here. Miles Sanders is a little bit more concerning to me right now than he was a couple weeks ago because I'm freaking out about that Carolina offensive line. If you're a member here, you saw the video that I did, the film breakdown last week, that showed us why I'm a little bit worried about him. But for Dameon Pierce, I'm not worried at all. In fact, for Dameon Pierce, I think that he is a guy that could absolutely make his way into the mid RB2 conversation with ease. We're only one spot lower on Alexander Mattison, and with Alexander Mattison, the biggest thing for us is number one, This is going to be a heavy passing attack. Hawkinson, Addison, Jefferson, all the uns in the world there in Minnesota. So does it limit some of Mattison's upside? I think so. But I think on a weekly basis, given the touches he has, he should still be pretty safe. Now we're lower on J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers, and really that's just for the mere fact of guys that have dealt with injuries that haven't quite looked like their self at times. Now, I will say this, when J.K. Dobbins did end up coming back last year, he had some games that looked okay, and he still showed some of that burst. But how many touches does he lose to Gus Edwards, and can he stay healthy? Same thing for Cam Akers, but this is a worse offense than what we've seen them have in the past. Cam Akers, he did not look good last season. About 3/4 of the year looked like that Achilles injury had torched his career. And then all of a sudden at the end, blew up for a few games. Do you trust those few games, or do you trust what we saw before that? Now, Matthew Stafford being back and fully healthy could definitely help out, but Cam Akers is a guy that we're just not willing to trust given the offense that he plays in and the injury that he had previously. I don't love being lower on James Conner and Rachaad White, but unfortunately, based on the team around them, I think we need to be. James Conner, I mean, listen, Arizona, you basically signaled to the world that you're cashing it in for this year. They're trading guys. It looks like they're really looking at that Caleb Williams run in the next draft. And that could hurt James Conner. He's not going to look good on the ground. He's going to have to be heavily reliant in the passing game. And this is a guy that in the past just breaks down way too easy. Unfortunately, you're probably going to have to pencil him in for quite a few missed games. And for Rachaad White, I've done some videos on him. I was really excited about his potential earlier in the season, but when you look at his efficiency from last year, it turned out that he was absolute garbage. He is going to need a substantial increase in touches to get him anywhere near consistently good RB2 numbers. And now on top of it, Ryan Jensen is out for the season, making that offensive line even worse than it already was. James Cook, we've got at RB23, and Jake and I must be splitting this one a little bit because I do have James Cook even a few spots higher than this. He has consistently been one guy that I've come back to this offseason and tell myself over and over and over, I gotta have him in as many drafts as possible. I love James Cook this year. Now, we are a little bit lower on David Montgomery, and the reason why is because he's not going to score 17 rushing touchdowns like Jamal Williams did last season. Now, could he be a little bit more consistent in the run game? Absolutely. But you could still give him, let's say, 10 to 12 rushing touchdowns, and he could still finish right in this area, making him a decent flex start every week. We're definitely lower on Javonte Williams, and that's just, again, part of the reason we talked about with like Breece Hall, the knee injury, the potential for re-aggravation, the potential for missing time after you're coming back from that ACL. Javonte Williams is a guy for me that when I look at him, given his current ADP, if he falls for me, I'm okay with that, but I'm not drafting him as my RB2. So depending on where he goes in the ADP has a lot to say about whether or not I'm even interested. This might be our biggest discrepancy because we've got Alvin Kamara all the way up at RB15. Now, Jake and I both agree that given his potential work in the passing game and the fact that other members of the Saints just have issues staying healthy, yeah, I'm talking about Michael Thomas, it could still lead to quite a bit of volume in the passing game when he comes back from his suspension. I also think we're a little bit lower than the community on Kendre Miller because I don't think Kendre Miller is going to be nearly as big of a benefit to the Saints this year as a lot of other people think that he will be. I think it's going to be a whole lot of Alvin Kamara. We're going to see some Jamal Williams, and Kendre Miller will fill in every once in a while. We're a little bit higher on Isaiah Pacheco as well. This is clearly the starter in that offense, and they can rotate a few guys here and there, but Isaiah Pacheco is one of those guys that I look at and I just say, hey, he could be a safe pick this year, even if his upside is a little to be desired. It's also crazy how much higher we are on Dalvin Cook than the rest of the community. Listen, they're not bringing Dalvin Cook in to just hang out. If they felt like Breece Hall was truly going to be the guy that we saw last year, What reason would there have been to sign Dalvin Cook? You could have spent less money to get like a Kareem Hunt or something like that. They signed Dalvin Cook to be the guy this year, to supplement with Breece Hall every once in a while, and to really help shoulder the workload so then next year Breece Hall is 100% healthy and ready to go. Dalvin Cook is going to be the guy for them this season. To see him this far down in the ECR is kind of baffling to me. We're also a little bit higher on DeAndre Swift right now as well. Now, the RB25 number is one that you look at and you say, what does he need to hit that? Well, he could still hit that and miss like 4 games this season. But it's all going to depend upon what happens in that backfield. And we do think that at the end of the day, DeAndre Swift's talent will win out over Rashad Penny, who could end up being hurt, and even Kenneth Gainwell. It's kind of weird to mix all those names together right now, but that's where we're at. I think his talent wins out, and because of that, even if he misses a few games, he finishes higher than the ECR right now. Now, Khalil Herbert at RB31 is because Jake and I do have a very large difference of opinion on him. I think Khalil Herbert could go as high as like a low-end RB2 this season. Jake really feels like Dante Foreman and Roschon Johnson are just waiting to steal his job, and I get that, and I understand that, and they technically are waiting to steal his job, so that is correct. But I just think as long as Khalil Herbert stays healthy, he's going to be the guy. And his efficiency last year was off the charts. The ECR thinks Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson are really close together, and we don't agree with that. We think Brian Robinson is still the guy over Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is going to get work in the passing game, but really he's only going to be like a flex because I believe that they are going to try and pound the football with Brian Robinson this year to help open up the run game for Sam Howell. And then those two will just work together. I think the majority of the touchdowns in this backfield goes to Brian Robinson though, and that's why we've got him a lot higher. And to wrap things up at RB35, we've got A.J. Dillon, who is the same exact spot in the ECR. A.J. Dillon is going to be utilized this season, but we think so much of Aaron Jones that A.J. Dillon, even if he gets 200 carries this season, unless he gets a lot of touchdowns, probably isn't going to be going a lot higher than this. Now, a lot of people might be saying, well, what's the difference between this backfield and Detroit's backfield, and you've got David Montgomery higher? Well, we just think more of Aaron Jones. We think Aaron Jones is going to be a guy that Jordan Love is going to cling to, and he's going to want back in there with him as much as possible. And we also believe that Aaron Jones will be heavily utilized in a lot of those goal line situations. A.J. Dillon could find himself in there as well, but over the last couple of years, running even passing plays at the goal line, Aaron Jones continues to be in there. He scores a lot in the red zone, and I think we see that again in this season. Yo, Headliner Nation, there you go. I ripped through the top 35 ECR running backs just like that, and I gave you a breakdown on where we had them. Now, if you want the full details on our entire rankings, including our top 250 overall rankings for standard, half, and full, plus our top 55 running backs, you got to get the draft guide, and you got to get those this week. And I guarantee you, again, you're going to feel way more prepared for this draft than any other draft you've done by using our draft guide. Before you get out of here, though, hit that like button for me. Comment down below. Look at the ECR I just gave you in this video, and I want you to tell me one guy that you have much higher than the ECR and why. And if you're new here, you've got to subscribe and become a part of Headliner Nation today. Ladies and gentlemen, peace out. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I'll catch y'all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.